One second. All right, gentlemen, you are live and you can start the meeting whenever you'd like.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Village of Wolverine Lake virtual work session for Wednesday, February 24th to order. So please stand for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United States of
of the
America,
United States of America,
to the republic where it
which
stands,
is
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Nedrow,
Here.
Wolverine Lake, Nedrow.
Yep, oh, that's right. Thank you. Mr. Malik.
Here, Wolverine Lake.
Tabitha here.
You muted?
No, Paige was,
Her Paige is here.
yeah.
There she is.
okay. Can
There you are.
you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, Nedrow,
Yes, here. Wolverine Lake.
Duff,
Yes, here, Wolverine Lake.
Dumont, Malik,
Here, Wolverine Lake.
McNutt,
Here, Wolverine Lake.
Jeremini,
Here, Wolverine Lake.
O'Brien.
Here, Wolverine Lake.
I have not heard anything from Mr. Dumont.
Neither have I.
Yeah, okay. Well, with that,
We need a motion to excuse or not excuse.
I don't think we can make motions at work sessions, right?
Correct.
So I guess that means we don't have to, Bob.
All right, no problem.
That's why I wasn't gonna go there, but that's fine. So I guess a couple things before we get started here. First of all, most of council knows, but for anybody that doesn't, that's tuned in or might be looking, Kathy Behrens, our new treasurer, passed away. It was December 14th, or I mean, February 14th, I believe, right, John?
That is correct.
And her funeral is going to be this Friday, in fact. And didn't even get a chance to start with us, but she was I know she was looking forward to it from what we'd heard. So that adds the new treasurer position back to our, I guess, our agenda tonight. So as far as goals, and then also this afternoon, just want to let everybody know that Joe Schuld passed away. Neighbor right down the street here from me, 3 doors down, and been sick for a while, and was on the water board, very active in water board, been on planning, and was very active the fishing tournament and other things around the village here. So Joe will be missed, and I just wanted to pass that along and make sure that everybody for both families are in our thoughts tonight. So with that, we'll get moving on the agenda, which is call it public, I guess.
We currently don't have anybody from the public in the meeting.
Okay, so that being the case, we'll bypass the call to the public and move on to village goals. So I guess what I'd like to do is go through where we were basically at on goals from the last couple of years. And then we'll move forward from there. So back in 19 and 20, I guess, we had, as far as administrative portion of our goals, we had review staffing levels of the police department, review staffing levels of the DPW, review our charter and place appropriate charter updates and amendments on ballot in 18. That was actually 17 goals. We issued a handbook for employees, reviewed trash pickup fees. And as far as the parks go, we had Oak Island Park, Amenia Park, and Claire Miller infrastructure is going there. We paving the village parking lot, Oak Island Bridge repair, So last year we had, we're looking at trying to revive the CW3 meetings, which was actually going to be CW2, I think, with Wixom, Wolverine Lake and Commerce. There really hadn't been a whole lot of, I guess, activity for Walled Lake there. We looked at DPW leadership structure. Clara Miller Parks, we had the new bathroom, concession stand, storage building. We were looking at, we had some new refurbished playground equipment. Miracle Park was not feasible at that time, so we discounted that. We had the Veterans Memorial. As far as infrastructure goes, we had investigated the possibility of a hot wash station for boats at the DNR ramp. And there was any money available, so we bypassed that at that point. We looked at the repairing of the Benstein boardwalk, investigated solutions for remaining dirt roads in the village, and there was only a couple. Benstein pathway to Glengarry, we were looking at still moving forward on that, as with the pathway down South Commerce. And we had, as far as the water board, we had erosion studies and canals. So that was last year. As far as what we have carryover from last year, as far as the admin, we could look at going with the CW2 meetings, but they were kind of interesting and they were nice to get together. But with COVID the way it is, I don't think that's really going to be an alternative moving forward, at least this year. So as far as the DPW leadership structure, we had met, the negotiating committee had met recently here, and we proposed that structure to the DPW negotiating committee, and we're currently looking into that. So that's finally moving forward. We've had that on our agenda here for the last 5 years or so. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking for a new treasurer again. Parks and Rec, from park side of things, we've got the bathroom and concession stand / storage stand going forward. That's in process and will be finished up probably this spring here shortly. We did put some new playground equipment in. I'm sure that we got the grant, I believe, Dave, right? We're moving forward with the grant to look at trying to purchase some more equipment down the road here.
The grant application is in the works, yes.
Right. So
That has to be filed by April 1. And again, just so everybody is clear, if we are successful, that's a reimbursement program. So the village will be going ahead and will be making any improvements in terms of any new playground equipment, and then getting money from the state to pay us back down the road. So.
okay. We had the Veterans Memorial, which was made a heck of a lot of progress thanks to the guys on that committee. And I know there's a little bit more to do, but for the most part, the biggest, largest chunk of that is done and looks great. So sign at Clara Miller Park, we were looking at that here recently on Northeast Clara. I put Clara Park or Clara Miller Northeast, I guess. As far as the infrastructures, there's only a couple, like I said, only a couple roads left, and that's on the south end over by Amelia and Adelaide. Waukito is basically vacated. We vacated a portion of it, and the other portion we basically shut down, so we don't have to worry about Waukito anymore.
Well, you still have a section, Brian, you still have a section of Waukito between Brisbane and Woodlawn.
Right.
It's gravel.
Yeah, that's right. We could look at paving that down the road. I guess, speaking of that, with what we've seen here recently on with the parking around the tennis courts, I mean, we discussed that briefly at the last council meeting. I mean, that might be a possible thing to try to roll into our paving program if there is anything this year, as far as maybe extending that parking lot out a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I look at that, it is the last road
Yep.
that isn't paved other than the one off of Lucille, is it?
Yeah,
You know,
Lucille and Adelaide or whatever down that way.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
But, you know,
Winghampton.
Winghampton, that's it. Yep,
there you go.
John.
Thank you. But, you know, we're finding money to extend the opening at the memorial. We're finding money to make parking spots at the tennis courts. We need to do that and be done with it.
Right. Well, if that's a goal, we can look at it.
It's been on the goal list for a couple years now.
Yes, it is. I agree. Well, that's what we had on there. As far as the pathways, I mean, the Benstein pathway is done. South Commerce, we discussed that. There's David. Hi, Dave.
Hey guys, sorry for being late.
Okay. So anyways, South Commerce pathway is probably not going to be go for quite a while, just because of logistics and the other issues that we discussed. McCoy Algae Pond project, we're still, I believe, trying to move forward on that. Right, Dave? Still in negotiations and trying to figure out how to move forward.
That's correct. We're still working with the property owner over there to work out the details to be able to move forward with that, but it is still something that she's potentially interested in doing.
Yep. And then the other thing was long-range road funding and planning. So that's basically where we're at, I guess. And I guess,
Brian, I have a question.
yeah,
And I know it was brought up in the past on the Benstein pathway. Okay, on right across from the pathway is the what's the restaurant?
Benstein Grill.
Benstein Grill. Right. And that pathway, you know, when there's people turning, there are cars that go over onto that shoulder to go around them. And is that something we can get the county to look into, putting up a guardrail right there along the pathway? I think it's been mentioned before, but
John's
it's
shaking
really
his head
not a
no.
safe thing.
Chief shaking his head no.
The reason I shake my head no is that I know that was looked at before. We were actually going to try to put some no parking signs, kind of use those as a guide along, but there has to be a certain distance of safety to be able to pull off the roadway. They cautioned us to do that when we did it. They said it was going to be used as almost a passing lane, an impromptu passing lane. And I see that. And unfortunately, until we get really good markings, road markings, I don't see that improving. I don't see that improving at all, to tell you the truth. I don't know what we can do.
Is there any way we can pursue the county? I mean, to push them? You know, it's going to be after the fact if somebody gets hurt. You know that, John.
Yeah, I do know that.
It's a shame.
I think that's something we're going to have to bring up with Mike Powell and see if we can have him work his angle to see if we can come up with a solution for that.
Okay.
I see that being an issue, and I see it being an issue with Oakland County Road Commission. I don't see them wanting to bend a whole lot. I don't think they're real happy that we have people going down the side of the road right there anyway. So, but
Right, I understand.
yeah.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
well, I guess at this point, why don't we just run around council, and we'll see what everybody else has to comment on. Go ahead, Malik, why don't you start us off?
I brought up a couple of my points, okay? At this point, I'd like to go ahead and hear everybody else's comments and then possibly intersect after the fact. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien.
Well, being a council member for exactly 3 months and not having any previous experience in any committees, this is kind of new to me, but I would like to see, is there any equipment or police cars, other vehicles that we need, those type of improvements? Because when you make those, when you put those into your goals and you use your finances to get those, it's something you're not going to have to do next year or the year after. Especially in my opinion, we're heading into possibly uncertain economic times.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be more in favor of making setting goals that are going to achieve long-term results for the village that, we won't have, I mean, if we can do it this year, then we don't have to do it a year from now or 2 years. Then, I mean, for instance, like when they fill the roads with the cracks in the roads with the tar,
The cracks in
it's
it.
right here, that works great. Makes the road last so much longer.
Yep.
Well,
Well, I know for the police department, John, Chief Ellsworth looks at his budgets of what he has to look forward to on a yearly or even a longer basis than that
Yeah.
5-year plan. So
Just so you know, and I don't want to steal Mike Condek's thunder because I think he was going to chime in here also. We have a rolling 5-year forecast for major expenditures for the police department. And what happens is instead of buying 3 or 4 vehicles at one time, I try to buy 3 vehicles within 4 years. So just kind of spread it out. This year, we're getting our vehicle late. Next year, it might be a little earlier, so it might only be 8 months between vehicles. However, I also have a vehicle with 110,000 miles on it that I need to get replaced, and that's in the process. We'll set that one aside and sell that for bids. We'll bring our new one in. We're going to get I'm in the process within the next 2 weeks. You'll see the Tahoe be striped. The Tahoe that I'm currently driving will be striped with the graphics, and overheads will be put on it, and that's ready to go. That's going to be turned over to the guys to drive, and they'll drive 35,000 miles a year, for the next 3 years on that. And in 3 years, we'll look at replacing that one. So what we try to do is 3 out of 4 years, basically, we replace our vehicle. And sometimes I can push it back a year. It's difficult because we drive each vehicle about 35,000 miles a year. And if we go much more than 100,000 or 110,000 miles, it starts to be not worth it because we keep having to put more and more money into it. So we try to replace them on that. The same way we have long-term goals. I have certain computers I replace I think it's every 5 years or every 7 years. We do that so we don't get into a bind where we have to buy 5 at once. So we have a pretty good program, and I know Mike Condek can probably fill you in a little bit better, but what I try to do is I go to Mike in the spring and say, these are the things that I'm looking for. We're going to have to do this year. I have 3 bulletproof vests, for example, and they're $1,000 a piece. So I budget for those, 3 this year, 2 the following year, 3 the next year, 2 the following year, to make sure that we don't have an $8,000 outlay all at once. So those are the types of things that we've kind of worked into. We try to make it work like that. When we have a new hire, it kind of throws a little kink in things. But so those are the types of things. One major purchase we're going to have, it's within the 5-year forecast that I put out last year, is a new police boat. The boat we currently have is a 2000, so that's 22 years old. It's still in great shape, but I give a lot of credit to the council at that time that gave us a boat lift to be able to get it up out of the water. That really saved a lot of wear and tear and that boat beating up against the dock. But the cables, the steering, those types of things will start to go, and we can't have those fail on us. We'd be down without a boat for weeks at a time, and we can't have that. So these are the types of things. About every 25 years, we have to replace a major piece of equipment, and that happens to be the boat. And so just so you know, I do have a 5-year forecast, and you're more than welcome to get a look at that as well. If anybody wants a copy of that, I'd be more than happy to send it to you.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to do it. It's a great plan. Very impressive.
And actually, Bill, I believe that Mike Condek, you can chime in on that one too, but DPW does basically the same thing. They look at what purchases they need, right?
Absolutely right, Mr. President. And Bill, your question is pertinent, very pertinent, because it's at this point in the year that I reach out to everybody, both our department heads, Chief Ellsworth and Andy Stone, all of the boards and commissions. I give them good data through February and then ask them to, at their subsequent meetings, discuss, come up with ideas, see what you want to, what they want to put in there. And I start amassing the budget. At the same time, I'm doing forecasts of revenues and various and sundry other things. So that's happening like right now.
Mhm.
I got my budget, or my mine today, actually. So yeah, we are on it, and we definitely do this. This is something that I've done since, well, at least for the last 10 years myself. So we do this on a rolling 5-year scale. So next year I'll probably be putting in things that will happen when I'm not even here. But at least, the next person that comes in is going to have a good idea of what the next 5-year major capital outlay budget is going to be. And I just think it's a great way to do it. And our line item budget is another great way to do these things. So we're very fiscally responsible when it comes to that stuff, and we definitely let you know when it's time. So
Okay. Anything else, Bill?
No, thanks.
Okay, Mark? Giormini? Sorry, I forgot. I just dwelled out there for a second and said, oh, we have 2 Marks.
Thank you. I'd start with the playground equipment at Claire Miller Park. And of course, that'll be contingent on pursuing on the grant and everything else. But again, in order to have that succeed with that grant, we would need to put in money, a line item on the upcoming budget for it. And then also just in general improvements in the in our pocket parks. There's a few things there that need to be worked on in terms of some fencing and finishing up on Amenia. Also looking at the dirt roads, I think that would be something to address this year and get that done and finished so that we are a fully paved community. Something not so much in the money world, but in other aspects would be to try and create some kind of an informational packet for new board and council members potentially that would contain some instruction about Robert's rules, the bylaws for the respective body, information about the Open Meetings Act and FOIA, and that would also describe roles and responsibilities specifically of chair people and and vice chairs and things of that nature, and then whatever else that board may feel is necessary for people to be up to date. And that way, when people are coming into these, joining up, they aren't completely unprepared or caught unawares of what might be expected of them, not only by their fellow members, but also in terms of legal requirements and things of that nature. And that way we'd have a little bit more uniformity and standardization, regardless of the level of turnover in a board or any kind of body that we have. Something else would just be looking at the pathways around the rest of the village and either looking at alternative routes, particularly when it comes to Commerce, because obviously it would require to do the pathway on Commerce, something to do with CW2 or CW3 and working with them. And that is definitely a long-term kind of project, but improving the signage perhaps to direct people through the park or through the side roads and things so they can get around. And then additionally, something to consider would be whether or not we should pursue Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a village holiday, seeing as how it's currently one at the state, federal, county, and township level. So that would be one thing to consider and look into. And then continuing developing long-term spending plans, reevaluating our paving projects due to what will probably be increase in costs, not only with raw materials and inputs, but just with the way things are looking in the economy. And that's about what I've got.
Okay, Mr. McNutt.
Can I sit back and listen to everybody for a little bit first?
Sure.
With Bill, you're new to this, so.
We'll go to Mr. Dumont.
Yeah, a lot of what I've heard covered much of what I was going to say, but I did want to bring up, and I know we've talked about it in the past, but I would like to see a second coat on the Benstein boardwalk. It got power washed this year and it got sealed, but it was so dry and it hadn't been sealed in so long that it soaked it up to where when I first walked up to it, I thought they forgot to seal it. A second coat, just anecdotally, my experience. I'm a plumber. I'm not a deck man, but that second coat makes it so much more waterproof. And I think it protected from the UV and it's one of those things where I think that the upfront investment, relatively small because it would just be sealing it, is worth the long-term longevity of the bridge. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Duff.
Staying the course in terms of being fiscally responsible with long-term projects and keeping up with the ongoing road projects, I think is the big thing. So
Yeah. Back to Mr. McNutt. That wasn't long.
That was good. No, that was all right. Dave had, you might have a good point. I was thinking about the bridge, Bensine Bridge. We use that quite a bit. And there's obviously areas that need repair, boards and screws that are coming up. And I don't know if there's future thinking potential to maybe widen it a little bit. You got bikes and walkers all come in different directions, and it can be a little dicey sometimes. When you get people rolling through, if they're not, they got their earbuds in and they don't hear traffic coming up behind them. A little difficult. So I don't know if that's a possibility or not. It's something to maybe look
Well,
at.
no, that'd be a fortune to do that. I think.
Yeah.
And actually, the reason it was that width was because originally, if we wanted it to be a bike path, it was going to have to be 10 feet wide.
Okay.
So we ended up
Footpath.
downgrading. It was going to be a boardwalk only. Is that correct, John?
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another one, I was looking through the 05 goals, and one of them in here was 75% riparians connect to sewers by 2015. Do we know if we're anywhere near that, if we've exceeded it?
I don't believe we're close to that yet.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Kondak. I think maybe you have an idea.
Yeah, we have a map drawn up. We probably would, it'd be great to supply it to everybody on council and show you all the data, all the people who have connected, where all the special assessments are. There is some renewed interest at the water board level and trying to see if we can come up with another special assessment project to get more people in the fold, as it were. Right. So that's going to take a little bit of, Mike Powell and I can probably put together a nice, just hold a special meeting for that sort of thing and just lay out all the options and all the alternatives. People may be interested, they may not. We have a lot of people who connect on their own. Yeah. But we can come up with the statistical numbers. They're probably at our fingertips. And again, with that map, I think you'd find it very illustrative.
Okay. Yeah, obviously it was a goal that was set. So seeing where we're at in relation to that goal is pretty important. And this is more of a logistic question in regards to positioning. And maybe John Chief can speak to this, is there a way to, or a spot to maybe put the police boat and hoist in a different area? Because when it's sitting on the hoist, everybody knows that they're not out there. If they don't see it, then they might have a different opinion as to, getting out there and doing their things, right? Is that possible?
Is it possible? Sure. I guess it is possible. I don't know that it is going to be logistically very, I don't know how far we could move it. We could move that. We'd have to float that boat lift somewhere and get it in somewhere. Somebody would have to give us some sort of access easement type thing for us to park it at somebody's particular place. The problems that go along with that are probably more than we want to discuss tonight. One of them being the safety issue for our boat, or security issue for our boat. As it stands right now, we do have security cameras on it. And when you're tucking it away somewhere, that's great for not being seen. However, it's also not so great because it's tucked away, other people can get to it and do things, for example. But I know what you're saying, and it's terrible. But at the same time, people see that we do have our own police boat,
Oh, yeah.
and they know that we do go out, and so hopefully they're a little bit more careful. We have gone out when we've been, the boat's been in a lift. We've gotten calls, or we see a violation that we need to deal with. We do deal with it.
No,
So,
I commend you guys on your response and your attention. I mean, we got a great officer that's out there,
yeah.
So that aspect of it. I was just wondering if,
Yeah, we actually, and I know you are familiar with Rick John. You remember when we had the boats at his house, and up until 2000, and when we got our boat lift, and the DNR gave us permission to leave our boat in the water at the access there. I don't see us going anywhere else right now, just because of the things I've stated, and but I guess we could be a little more responsive too if needed. So
It's convenient where it is, that's for sure.
it is certainly convenient, and also, it makes it very nice if we get a call in the evening or at night when the officer can just run down there, jump in the boat, and go. It's lit down there. We have some pretty good lighting down there when the light works, right, Brian?
Yeah.
We had problems for years with that light working, but
on and off.
but I don't necessarily think I want to see it moved, but that's not saying that we can't move it off that lift for a while and put it somewhere for a little bit either. So make people think we're out there. So
it's just an observation and a thought. And
I appreciate that.
Even if, there was a resident or, a member of this council that said, hey, you can put it in front of our place, on our dock or something. And so it's, it's under observation. It's viewed. It's not tucked in a corner somewhere. I don't think it should be tucked in a corner somewhere either, because just for that purpose, too much mischief.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Brian, Bob Malik back.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
There is one other thing I'd like to see initiated a little better, is new resident packets. Okay.
We used to have those.
We still do.
I know, but I make it a point when I have neighbors move in, I make sure I have one on hand and deliver it. But we need to be made aware, even if they make me aware, I'll go deliver them to people. Okay. I just think it's a very important item to a new resident, whether it be a homeowner that's buying or a renter that's moving in. But there's so much information in those packets that we're just neglecting to deliver to people. Okay. And it's not an intentional neglect, but it just happens. But we do have a good number of turnover throughout the community. And I think it's an important thing that put in residents' hands.
If I can comment on that real quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, when new residents come in, they get the things like their garbage can and they introduce themselves, whether they're paying a water bill or whatever, and they say they're a new resident. The girls do a really good job of getting that in their hands. And so when they do come in, we do that. And obviously, Bob, I think I'm fairly active on Facebook, and when I do hear of a new resident, I ask them flat out, and we've delivered 3 or 4 of these new resident packages right to their homes, and they're just flabbergasted that we can do that. And I like to do that myself, and I know, you said the same. So they do a pretty good job of it. And the problem comes is we don't have any type of check-in system, I guess, as it were. Somebody who comes in, we rely on the neighbors to let us know, or they come in and let us know themselves. So well, if you can come up with a better way of getting notified when somebody moves in, I think we'd be all ears.
No, well, it's just, I had a perfect example. The house next door to me, the lady moved out. She had a renter move in. Well, I gave them a packet. They were here for like 4 months. Then she sold the house. The new gentleman moved in. I made it a point to deliver a new packet. I got 2 houses over on Connecticut. One just sold. I don't think they're totally into it. There's another one that's vacant, that's for sale. It's just, to make sure it gets into people's hands. I just, there's so much valuable information for our community. And again, I can't police the whole area, and I don't pretend to do it. But it's just, if anybody sees something going on, a house for sale, keep an eye open. And God, like I said, I'd be glad to make the delivery. And I know, John, you said you or your people do, and it's such a plus.
Mhm.
Bob, you should establish a welcome committee. That'd be great.
I need to be on another committee.
Okay,
But thank you, Mark.
Can I toss a quick thought in?
sure.
Sure.
I don't know how many lights, you talked about the light down by the boat dock not working sometimes, and I don't know how many in the village are LED and how many are not. And if we know how much we're spending on the electricity for the ones that are not, it might be a consideration to look at replacing some of these lights with much more efficient LEDs.
Actually, we're in the process of that, and I believe Mike Condat can probably talk a little bit about that. I think we were notified last fall of an opportunity to replace all the lights to an LED, and I believe we've applied for that. Is that correct, Mike?
No, we're not there yet, John. That was a Mike Smith pet project.
Okay.
He had gone far enough down the road to determine that we had probably a 2 or 3 year payback on that. And Bill, to your question, there are very few LED lights. We do have a separate account for our street lighting bill, which of course varies. We pay it monthly depending on how many hours of daylight versus nightfall and that sort of thing. But yeah, your point's well taken, and it's just one of the goals we have to take up. I think administratively, it's there, it's on the cusp, it's on the verge, but we just haven't followed through yet.
And actually, a couple of years ago, we ended up going through and replacing most of the lights in the village complex with LEDs.
We have done that, Brian. You're right.
Right. Yeah.
Both in the DPW area and in the office portion.
Right. Yeah. So we've looked at that, just not around the rest of the community, I guess.
Yeah, we install a lot of LED lights where I work for the Oscar Larson Company, and we do a lot of lighting upgrades, and the LED lights have gotten drastically better over the last few years, and the prices have come way down.
Yep.
And you can mount them on poles. The poles don't have to be so big and beefy anymore because they're so lightweight. The lights are.
Yeah, anytime we've had a request for a new light to go in, I know we did one over, I believe, at Lucille and Wolverine Drive area because we had some kids standing out there, and then those lights we could never keep going. And also, anytime any light needed to be replaced, we have been replacing them with the LED, like the one directly in front of the station, for example. That's been replaced now with an LED. So as they go, we try to replace them, but we have a maintenance agreement with DTE, and those things we have to notify them that they're out, and generally they will replace the old bulbs and until we request the LEDs to be replaced. So, but I think I think we're headed in the right direction. But that's a great point.
Yep. Anybody else? Well, at this point, I know we were looking at having Mr. Powell try to get us a long-range road funding program too, looking out 5, 6, 7 years. So I know that was one of our goals here for the last couple of years. And also it'd be nice to, I know Mike Smith was looking into the capital improvement plan, right? A little bit, but thinking about long range funding for the village. And I know Mr. Condek's done a great job of projecting where things were going based upon, what our changes might be down the road. For instance, we added the 4th DPW employee a couple of years ago, and they're down to 3 right now. We're looking at this, structure change. So there's a question whether we go back to a 4th DPW employee again, depending on the need. So we're looking at what that might impact. Chief, you were looking at possibly changing structure a little bit in the PD for down the road here too. So all those changes will definitely impact our fund balance moving forward based upon our projections as far as revenue coming in. So like I said, Mr. Condak's done a fantastic job in the past. And I know he looks at that on a frequent basis. So.
Yeah, Mr. President, the chief problem with that is that our road plan kind of goes off the rails. We have something in place. In fact, we had a very specific goal of spending down our fund balance to a level or a point where it was going to be close to 50% of our expenditures, where it's like almost 100% right now. And then we kind of get sidetracked and it doesn't happen. And so much flows from that. To be in the position that we are in, to be able to repair any of the roads that need attention, given the resources that we have, and not having to go into the bond market, not having to borrow money for it, is an enviable place to be. Lots of our contemporary units of government would love to be there. Notwithstanding the fact that interest rates are low, I get that, but to be able to do that and pay it down on a regular basis and basically take care of the needs as they develop, where you've got a scoring system and you put in the roads that need attention. Like I say, we've ad-libbed off of it. Now we're completely off the rails, and it does have to be revved up again. And from that, so much else flows.
Right, exactly.
Mr. President, do you want me to fill in the others about, because the conversation we had regarding the police department
sure.
and personnel.
No, that'd be fine.
I don't want them to sit there and wonder, and I know Mr. Malik and Mr. Duff are aware of it, as well as Mr. Gillum and yourself. But 5 years ago, I came to the village and said, I'm willing to do this as the chief, and we needed to restructure we had a deputy chief, we promoted a sergeant, and the deputy chief will be retiring at the end of August. He's going to be gone, and we needed to do something. And in my transition or succession plan, I wanted to make sure that I had the people in place to do the job and to continue the fine job that they're doing now. And in order to do that, I needed to start building some sort of a semblance of an administration with some rank structure. And rather than just hand it off to somebody, I want to be able to spend the next couple of years training them as far as not only just the structure of the police department, but to mentor them and to be able to keep doing what we're currently doing. I suggested to the administrative committee that we post for another sergeant's position, so we would have an additional sergeant to be able to come in. So I would have 2 sergeants for approximately a year or so. And we would fill that other position because we would fill it from within, and we would replace that officer. So we would add an officer, we'd be losing a deputy chief, adding an officer and an additional sergeant from within. So the structure for a year at least would be the chief, 2 sergeants, and 5 officers. So it basically maintains the same amount of personnel, with the exception of replacing the deputy chief with a full-time officer. The deputy chief was part-time. He was 64 hours every 2 weeks. And the full-time person would be 80 hours every 2 weeks. That's an increase, and it does cost a little bit more, especially it's going to depend on, obviously, the benefits or who we get to fill that position. But that's going to be needed going forward, because as we go forward, I can see the end of the rainbow, as it were, for me. I know my approximate leave date when I plan on leaving this job, and that will be in approximately 3.5 years. So what I want to do is spend the next 3.5 years building an administration in the police department that can be seamless. So when I step out, somebody else can step in and everybody can move up the chain of command if that's the council's choosing. I want to give them the opportunity to be able to learn from me over the next 3.5 years, starting with, bringing up the right people and put them in the right places. I don't want to just appoint somebody because they've been here the longest. I want to get the right people in the right places. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to need to observe them and their leadership skills for a length of time. That being said, the 2 sergeants would be for a year. If I felt that there was a place for a lieutenant out of one of those 2 sergeants, we could test the lieutenant from those 2 sergeants, and we would promote one of the sergeants to a lieutenant. Therefore, the structure would go chief, lieutenant, sergeant, and 5 officers, which is generally what a department of this size would be. And I would hope after that lieutenant was there for a year and a half or so, that that person would be able to step into my position if, again, the council chooses to. So I have a succession plan that I'd like to put in place, but obviously it's going to take the will of the council to do that. So I think we have some great talent in our police department. Every one of them brings something to the table. I just want to make sure that we are bringing our people along, training them enough to where they can continue to serve where they're best needed. And that's where I'm kind of leading with this is this spring, early summer, I would like to test for a sergeant's position and start interviewing for a replacement person, because we know that the Deputy Chief Wachowski will be leaving at the end of August. So September 1st, we could promote a sergeant and have that other officer start. It'd be that would be kind of a seamless way to do it. And I don't want to be short over the summertime when we're trying to take our summer vacations, et cetera. And I think we would be further ahead to have this all planned out. That was what I basically pitched. Is that correct, Mr. Nedro?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
To the administrative committee, and they seem to agree that that's probably a good way to go. I guess I would like to hear the rest of the council's opinion on that. If anybody wanted to speak up.
I think that's a great plan. Having the thought process in place now, planning for that is important, and the way you're addressing it is exactly how you'd want to address it. People that are familiar with it, people that you have trained, that you have worked with, that know the system. It's really the best way to do it, honestly.
One of the concerns that I had was that we did nothing, and then when it comes time for me to leave, I'm sorry, I would feel guilty if I just walked away from this place. And you brought somebody in that was not familiar with not just the community, but the customs of the community and what the people expect. This is not like a normal chief's job. I will tell you that. I've been other places, and you're expected to do many more personal things, I guess would be. We are, and I'm okay with that, and my officers are okay with that. And that's one of the things I tell them when we hire them is you're going to be expected to do things that you would never think you were going to do as a police officer, and they do, and they're okay with that. Those are the types of people we have here. I just don't want to bring in somebody from the outside that has no clue of the personality of the village of Wolverine Lake. It could really ruin something good that we have. And I feel that we have a really good department. We have some quality people, and I just want to make sure we kind of maintain that. And so for me to be able to hold my head up and walk away from this place in 3.5, 4 years, that's kind of why I wanted to start this plan now.
John, Bob Malik, also something you might express when we had the meeting with Mark, myself, and David and Brian. You mentioned about how it's a process to become a sergeant.
Oh, sure.
It isn't just, so to give everybody the general concept of what's involved.
Yeah, our sergeants are expected to attend what we call Staffing Command College. And for anybody that's been in the military, it's basically a sergeant's course. But Staffing Command is a little bit more than that. It's to plant the seed, make them think differently than you would as a responding officer, for example. You're taught budgeting, you're taught liability issues, you're taught additional training, how to be a teacher, how to be a mentor. And these things are very important. When you get young people to come into this job, it's very difficult. They send you to an academy for 13 weeks and say, boom, there you go. And it's a lifelong learning process. I still go to school. I went to a conference 2 weeks ago. I was in a conference. I learned a lot. And some of you might have seen that we talked about what we're going to be doing with the autism community and those on the spectrum. And those types of things, you have to be able to act on them, and you have to know what your capabilities are and what your liabilities are before you act on them. And in order for us to get a supervisor, a good supervisor, they need this staffing command. And that's 10 months, 1 week a month, plus a lot of homework and a major project that they have to complete in the community. So those types of things, they don't just happen overnight. That's why I need some time with a new sergeant. I need some time with my old sergeant. I need some time to be able to go forward with this and make the right decisions going forward. And I'm not saying that I know who that's going to be. I really don't. At this point, I don't think any of our officers or even the sergeant at this time is ready to take over a department. But in 3.5 years, I think we might have somebody that's going to be really good for that. But I need to be able to train them and have the ability to send them off to the schools. And again, yeah, we're going to be adding some additional hours, 16 hours or something like that, to the payroll every 2 weeks, with going from a part-time person to a full-time person. But we're going to be losing one officer or sergeant 1 week a month for 10 months. So those types of things we're going to have to adjust and work around, and my guys are really good about doing that. And to be able to obtain the training they need, that's something that's really going to have to be done.
Thank you.
Good synopsis. With that, I guess, anybody else have any ideas or any thoughts? As far as I'm concerned, Mr. O'Brien brought up a good point, and we don't really know which way things are going to be moving down for longer range than a year or so. I mean, I've heard stories that could flip either way. So I guess my comment is we just need to be real clear on what we're looking at doing and try to be careful on how we move forward, be cautious on how we move forward. So we've got a lot of things that we've accomplished the last 3, 4, 5 years. And a lot of those improvements do need to carry forward. This village is changing a little bit. It's not the quaint little community it used to be. There's a lot of building going on, and like Mr. Malik said, things are, people are moving in and moving out. So demographics are changing, and people's needs and wants also change with that. So just need to try to maintain and try to be cognizant of that and try to provide for what our community wants. So there's a lot of good points that were brought up tonight, and a lot of them aren't really that cost prohibitive. So there's some other projects that could be, but all of them I'm sure will make the village a better place to be. So I don't know how we move forward past this, but I guess we'll probably try to jot things down or try to get things in order and see what we can move forward with. This basically gives Mr. Kondak something that to be able to budget for. So a lot of this will kind of give administration an idea on how we need to perceive the budget for next year. So I don't know. Anything else we need to discuss at this point, I guess?
I just want to interject if I can, when we're talking about the budgeting part of it, there's really two categories. There's a have tos and the want tos.
Right.
That you have to do, and that talks about any road repair, any infrastructure, any equipment, any personnel, that's stuff that we have to do moving forward. And the want to, those are the things that you would love to have and make the village a better place and make it, keep it going the way people are moving in because of the decisions that were made by previous councils and how the village is, perceived and is, by our DPW, by our police force, by our council. That's the reason everybody's coming. So kind of divided up in those two categories, the have tos and the want tos, then looking at it that way would be a good way to start.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian and council, from my perspective, this has been very helpful for me. In addition to the fact that I think this will be useful in terms of putting the budget together going forward, but just from my perspective, in terms of trying to focus our day-to-day efforts and the things that we're working on day in and day out as to the types of things that you see are the priorities. Obviously, there are things that come up on a day-to-day basis that we have to take care of. And
Right.
some of which we know are coming and some of which come completely out of the blue. But this will help me in terms of identifying the things that we need to consistently be spending time on to try to move forward to accomplish these goals. So I appreciate the discussion tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, I guess we're pretty much through then as far as this point goes. I mean, I don't know what else we need to really discuss tonight. So.
Mr. President, if I could real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
We have been meeting with different companies regarding our building security cameras and some possibly going with some keyless access for some certain doors on the building, slide keys or key readers or something along that line too, for the building. But we are looking into, and I know I was asked to look into this, we are looking into body cameras also. What I'm finding so far is that may be cost prohibitive at this point because of not necessarily because of the cost overall of the equipment. It's the maintenance, the software redaction, the time it takes for the software redaction, as well as the retention period for the amount of data that we would have to have. We're looking into it. I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning with one of our suppliers, the one that does our current in-car cameras. But I wanted you to know that that was brought up, I believe, by Mr. Smith before. He wanted us to look into that. We are looking into that, and we might be able to increase the protection of our parks and our buildings, your equipment, at a much better cost than what we're currently doing. So we might be able to get rid of our cable, for example, at the park, and use a simple modem to be able to transfer not 2 cameras, but possibly 4 cameras from Clara Miller Park to be able to get much better park coverage. So I wanted you to know, I met with them today. I think Mr. Giarmini saw me down at the park. At the same time, he was down at the park doing stuff. I was meeting with him, our camera person, and going over some logistics. So I wanted you to know that we are going forward with that, and just looking at some possible improvements on our cameras.
Good. Well, that was actually, I brought that up to Mr. Smith because that was how all the stuff went last summer, last spring, I guess, when we had all the uprisings and stuff. And
yeah, and
I was kind of concerned with our position, and you had looked into it in the past. So
yeah, and as it goes forward, we would like to be able to do it. I'm just not real sure because of the demand, A, and B, the cost portion of it is very high right now. A lot of them are being underwritten by federal grants, but they're for larger departments. And so they don't feel they need to come down on the prices at all right now. So that's part of the problem we have.
Well, there's a lot of things that weigh into it. I know we've had that
Yep.
discussion.
And I just wanted you to know, we're still having those discussions and we're still looking into it. It's not a dead issue. Anything we can do to protect believe me, our people want them. It protects them more than
Right.
you know, because we do the right thing and we're not afraid of cameras. It's just that whether it's going to be cost prohibitive, you know, we thought our cameras in our cars were cost prohibitive until we did them, and then it actually saved us much more money in court overtime from that. And I know
Well,
Mr. Gillum
if
can.
there's a possible way to tie all that together, like you say, within the
Yeah.
cars, within the body cams,
Yep.
and our security cameras at the park. you
And
know,
we're working
mall,
on that.
whatever.
And that's
Yep.
something that could be possible. So I just
Very
wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mr. Nedrow,
Yes, sir, Bob.
one other thing I remember reading, don't we have an issue with one of the pump houses that needs to be brought up to date more?
Helmsford, or was it
Is
one of
that the one?
Well, Helmsford, we actually took out of service. Remember, that was because of the
Right.
arsenic issue. But we were going to use that as an augmentation pump. And I think there was a cost, it was cost prohibitive just to switch over to the augmentation pump at that point.
Oh,
Is that
no,
correct?
Mr. President, we are using it for that express.
Oh, okay, okay.
And as far as the repairs to the Penny Lake and the Laguna pump houses, we're right in the midst of doing that. We budgeted for them for the improvements, and I think we're close to being done, although I did speak with Andy the other day and there might be a little bonus surprise, but we put a lot of money into them so far. I would point out that they are, those expenses are in the water fund,
Right.
rightfully so, because, the pump houses exist to supply water to our several hundred customers, and they're the ones that should be paying for it, and so that's kind of built into the rates that they're paying at the moment. But we're right in the middle of doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Well, with that, I don't think really have anything else to talk about tonight. So
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second that.
I guess that's a motion by Malik, second by Duff to adjourn. Roll call vote. Well, we can't really vote on this, can we? I guess we
No.
can.
This is something you need to vote on, yes.
I guess we can, yeah. Roll call vote,
Duff?
Paige, please.
Yes.
Duff, Dumont,
Yes.
Malik,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Jeremini,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Nedra.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for your
Yeah.
input.
Hey,
Night.
Mark, Duff, and